The war had lasted 6 years, and no one in the galaxy remembered how it truly began. Some said it was a border dispute. Others claimed it was an insult during a failed negotiation. The Valkyrian Empire said humanity expanded too fast. Humanity said the Valkyrians tried to intimidate them. In the end, the reason no longer mattered. What mattered was that two powers now faced each other across dozens of star systems, and neither side was willing to fall. Princess Elira stood in the high chamber of the Valkyrian capital, her long silver cloak falling neatly behind her. The chamber walls were carved from dark crystal, filled with symbols of conquest and victory. Every image told the same story. The Valkyrian Empire always won. Yet today, the High Council looked afraid. Elira could feel it. She did not need her empath training to see it in their rigid posture or hear it in their careful silence. The war against humanity had not gone as planned. Human fleets did not break. Human colonies did not surrender. Even when outnumbered, humans fought with a calm, stubborn will that made no sense. They retreated only when it suited them. They lost planets but never their ability to strike back. Elira of House Vel, the High Chancellor said at last. His voice echoed through the chamber. You have been summoned for a duty that will decide the fate of our empire. She already knew what was coming. Rumors traveled fast through palace halls, even when guarded by silence. I am listening, Elira said. Her voice was steady. A Valkyrian princess was trained for this. The Chancellor gestured and the image of a human star system appeared in the air. Peace talks, neutral space. A single name appeared beneath it, Commander Elia's ward. To end this war, the Chancellor said, we will offer what humanity values most, a bond, a marriage. The chamber fell silent. Elira did not gasp, she did not protest, but inside something tightened. A human? She asked calmly. Yes, another counselor said. A military officer with influence, trusted, respected. Elira had studied humans. They were physically weaker than Valkyrians, short-lived, emotion-driven, dangerous in groups but fragile alone. Their strength came from numbers and machines, not honor or bloodline. You want me to marry an enemy, she said. You will marry an ally, the Chancellor corrected, or we will continue a war that is slowly draining us dry. Elira understood the unspoken truth. For the first time in centuries, the Valkyrian Empire did not know how to win. I accept, she said. There was a faint ripple of surprise quickly hidden. You understand this is not a request, the Chancellor said. I understand my duty, Elira replied. 2 weeks later, she stood aboard a neutral station at the edge of contested space. The wedding chamber was small, plain, and strangely empty. No banners, no ceremonial guards, no sacred fire. This alone unsettled her. Valkyrian weddings were grand affairs meant to show power. This felt more like a quiet agreement than a conquest. The doors opened and the human entered. Commander Elia's ward was not what she expected. He wore a simple dark uniform, no visible medals. His hair was short, his face marked with faint lines that suggested stress more than age. His eyes were calm, alert, and focused, not on her body or her rank but on her face. He stopped a respectful distance away and inclined his head. Princess Elira, he said, thank you for coming. Thank you, not greetings of dominance, not false charm, just thanks. You are calm, Elira said before she could stop herself. So are you, Elias replied. The human officiator began the ceremony. The words were brief. No declarations of ownership, no binding threats, just promises of peace, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. When it ended, there was no applause, no roar of approval, just silence. It is done, the officiator said. The treaty is active. Elira waited for something to happen, for guards to move, for restraints, for commands. None came. Elias turned to her. You'll be given a choice of residence, human space or Valkyrian space, neutral systems too if you prefer. A choice, she asked. Yes. No empire offered choices to political tools. "I will come with you," Elira said. "I must observe my enemy closely." Elias nodded as if this was expected. "That's fair." The human ship was smaller than Valkyrian warcruisers but efficient, clean, quiet. The crew moved with practiced ease, acknowledging Elira with respectful nods, not fear. No one stared. She expected curiosity. She expected hatred. She found professionalism. During the journey she watched. Humans worked, ate, joked, and rested together without strict hierarchy visible at all times. Officers listened to enlisted crew. Decisions were discussed, not declared. It felt unstable. "Does this not lead to chaos?" Elira asked Elias as they walked through a corridor. "It leads to accountability," he said. "Anyone can question a bad idea. And if the idea comes from you, then I answer for it." That made no sense to her. Power was not meant to be questioned. They arrived at a human-controlled system that had once been a battlefield. Now it was quiet. Rebuilding stations floated beside repair docks. Civilian ships moved freely, even near military platforms. Elira felt uneasy. "Why do you allow civilians so close to defense structures?" she asked. Elias did not answer immediately. "Because they live here," he said. "We protect people, not symbols." Over the following days, Elira learned more and understood less. Humans honored their dead with silence, not victory songs. They rebuilt destroyed enemy outposts into shelters. They treated wounded Valkyrian prisoners with the same care as their own soldiers. This was not weakness. It was something else. One night, as stars drifted past the viewport of their shared residence, Elira spoke softly. "You could have demanded more from this marriage," she said. "Territory, resources, submission." Elias looked at the stars. "We don't want an empire that hates us," he said. "We want a future where our kids don't have to fight yours." "Your people lost millions," Elira said. "Why forgive so easily?" Elias turned to her then, his expression serious. "This wasn't easy," he said. "This was restraint." That word echoed in her mind. Restraint was not something conquerors practiced. As days passed, reports arrived from across the galaxy. Other empires watched the sudden peace with confusion. Some laughed. Some whispered. Why would the Valkyrians submit to humans? Why would humans accept peace instead of dominance? Elira began to ask herself a far more dangerous question. What if humanity had never been fighting to win? One evening, alarms sounded briefly across the station. They stopped just as quickly. Elira moved toward the control room, instincts sharp. "What happened?" "Minor border incident," an officer said calmly. "Resolved." "Resolved how?" Elira pressed. Elias met her gaze. "By reminding them we were ready." That night, Elira dreamed of the Valkyrian banners falling. Not burned, not broken, but carefully folded away. She woke unsettled. She had married a human to stop a war. But for the first time, she wondered if the war had ended not because humans were weak, but because they had decided it was time. The station slowly became quieter in the weeks after the marriage, but the silence did not feel empty. It felt controlled, like a held breath. Princess Elira continued to live beside Commander Elias Ward, though beside did not mean what she expected. There were no guards outside her door, no tracking devices placed openly on her body, no rules given beyond simple safety guidelines. She was free to walk the station, speak to anyone, and observe everything. This freedom disturbed her more than imprisonment would have. In the Valkyrian Empire, freedom was a reward. Here, it seemed to be a default state. Each day, Elira followed a routine she created for herself. She observed human operations, studied their military structure, and spoke with civilians. She expected humans to be cautious around her, perhaps even hateful. Instead, she was met with polite distance or gentle curiosity. Some humans greeted her with nods. Others asked simple questions about Valkyrian culture, art, or food. None asked about the war. That silence spoke loudly. One morning, Elira stood in an observation deck overlooking a repair bay. Human engineers worked on a damaged cruiser. The hull bore scars from Valkyrian plasma weapons. "They're repairing a ship we nearly destroyed," she said quietly. Elias stood beside her, hands behind his back. "Yes. You do not fear it will be used against you again?" "No," he said. "Why?" "Because if it is," Elias replied, "we'll be ready again." There was no pride in his voice, no threat, just certainty. Elira began to notice patterns. Humans planned far beyond immediate needs. Food reserves existed for years, not months. Training simulations ran constantly, even during peace. Children in civilian habitats practiced evacuation drills as calmly as games. "Why train when there is peace?" Elira asked a human instructor. "Because peace doesn't last by accident," the instructor answered. That night, Elira reviewed galactic news reports. Other empires reacted strongly to the sudden alliance. Some accused the Valkyrians of betrayal. Others accused humanity of manipulation. One report mentioned fleet movements near human borders. Elira felt a chill. She brought the report to Elias. "Your enemies are testing you." "They always do," he said. "You are not increasing defenses," she noted. Elias smiled slightly. "We already did, years ago." Elira did not understand. She thought of Valkyrian doctrine: show strength openly, overwhelm enemies quickly, crush resistance before it grows. Humans did not show strength. They hid it. As days passed, Elira began spending more time with Elias, not as a political symbol, but as a companion. They shared meals. They spoke of their childhoods. Elias told her of growing up on a mining colony that was later destroyed in an early war. "You lost everything," Elira said. "Yes," he replied. "Then we rebuilt." "Why did you continue fighting after such loss?" "Because stopping would mean it happened for nothing." That answer stayed with her. One evening, alarms rang again, longer this time. The station lights dimmed briefly. Humans moved quickly but without panic. Civilians followed marked paths calmly. Elira stood still, watching. "What is happening?" she asked. "A probe crossed our border," Elias said. "Unmanned, armed, and it won't cross again." She waited for orders to attack, for fleets to launch dramatically. Instead, Elias tapped a console. Far away, a single flash appeared on the screen. The probe vanished. No celebration followed. "That was it?" Elira asked. "Yes. You did not warn them." "They already knew the risk," Elias said. "They chose to test us anyway." Elira felt something twist in her chest. The Valkyrians tested enemies to learn their limits. Humans allowed enemies to test themselves. Later that night, Elira accessed restricted Valkyrian records using her authority. She compared battle data with human casualty reports. Something did not match. Human losses were always lower than expected. They retreated early. They abandoned positions before defeat. They sacrificed territory but saved people. "They value lives over land," Elira whispered to herself. This was not how empires were built. One day, Elias invited her to a memorial garden within the station. It was small, quiet, filled with engraved names. "Every name here died in the war," he said. Elira noticed something strange. "These names include Valkyrians." "Yes, you honor our dead." "They were soldiers too," Elias replied. "They believed in something." Elira felt a tightness in her throat. In the Valkyrian Empire, enemy dead were erased from memory. This was different. As weeks turned into months, the galaxy shifted. Trade routes adjusted. Neutral worlds leaned closer to human space. Some empires quietly recalled fleets. Elira realized the truth before anyone said it aloud. The war had not ended because of her marriage. It had ended because everyone feared what would happen if it continued. One night, as they stood watching a distant star flare, Elira spoke. "You are not like other species," she said. Elias nodded. "We know. You do not seek dominance." "No. Then what do you seek?" Elias was silent for a long moment. "Survival," he said, "and meaning." Elira thought of the Valkyrian Empire. its hunger for victory, its endless expansion. She thought of humans, quiet, patient, prepared. For the first time in her life, she felt unsure which empire was truly ancient. A new report arrived the next morning. A border world allied to another empire had gone silent. Elira read it carefully. "This was not us," she said, "nor Velcarian forces." Elia's expression hardened slightly. "No, it was." "Then who?" "Someone who thinks humans are distracted," he replied. Elira looked up at him. "And are you?" "No," Elia said calmly. "We've just been waiting." Elira felt a shiver. She had married a human to stop a war, but now she understood something terrifying. Humanity did not rush into war. They let war come to them. And when it did, the silence from the border world did not last long. At first, human command treated it as a technical failure. Long-range sensors sometimes went blind near unstable stars, but as hours passed, no signals returned. No civilian traffic, no automated beacons. Nothing. Princess Elira stood beside Commander Elia's ward in the command center, watching data streams scroll across large screens. Human officers moved calmly, but their focus sharpened. Voices stayed low. Orders were short and clear. "This world housed 2 million civilians," Elira said quietly. "Yes," Elias replied. "And a small defense fleet," she added. "Yes." "You believe they are gone?" Elias did not answer right away. He studied the data, then spoke softly. "I believe something wants us to see what happens when humans look away." Elira felt a cold weight settle in her chest. "Who would dare?" she asked. "Someone who hasn't learned yet," Elias said. The command center received a new transmission. A distorted signal broke through the static. A symbol appeared on the screen: sharp angles, aggressive design. Elira recognized it. "The Car Dominion," she said. "They are ruthless, expansionist. They do not value treaties." "They've been watching us," an officer said. "They moved while we were focused on peace talks." Elias straightened. "Status of the world: cities damaged, power grids down, defense fleet destroyed, ground fighting likely ongoing." Elira turned to Elias. "You must respond now. If you delay, we won't," Elias said calmly. He raised his hand. Every screen in the room changed at once. Elira's breath caught. Hidden fleets appeared on the display, dozens of them, emerging from deep space positions she had never seen recorded. Some were near human core systems. Others were already close to car space. "You hid fleets inside your own territory," she whispered. "We hid them everywhere," Elias replied. Orders flowed instantly. Ships that looked like cargo haulers shifted configuration, weapons unfolding from their hulls. Civilian traffic routes rerouted automatically. Medical stations went to emergency readiness. There was no shouting, no dramatic speeches, just action. Elira followed Elias onto a command ship within the hour. As they entered faster-than-light travel, she felt the familiar distortion, but something else too: purpose. When they arrived near the damaged world, the sight stole her breath. The planet's surface was scarred. Cities burned. Smoke reached the upper atmosphere. Car ships hung in orbit, large and cruel in design. "They're still here," Elira said. "Why didn't they flee?" Elias watched quietly. "Because they expected us to arrive angry. And that's not how we fight." Human fleets emerged from multiple vectors at once. They did not charge. They surrounded. Precision strikes disabled engines, weapons, and communications. Car ships tried to form defensive lines, but every move was predicted. Elira watched a massive car battleship lose power and drift helplessly. "They're not destroying them," she said. "They're disabling." "Yes. Why?" "Because the war isn't with the soldiers," Elias said. "It's with the system that sent them." Ground forces deployed next. Human soldiers moved through ruined cities with disciplined speed. They rescued civilians first, human and alien alike. Medical teams followed closely behind combat units. Elira saw Velcarian survivors being treated by human medics. "They help even now," she whispered. On the ground, resistance collapsed within hours. Car troops, trained for terror and domination, found themselves surrounded by soldiers who did not fear them. Elira observed the aftermath from orbit. "What happens to the car prisoners?" she asked. "They'll be questioned," Elias replied. "Then returned." "Returned," she repeated, "to their empire." "Yes, that is a mistake," Elira said. "They will regroup, they will strike again." Elias looked at her. "Not after what happens next." Within days, human fleets crossed into car space, but not to conquer. They targeted shipyards, command hubs, propaganda centers, financial cores, everything that enabled the car dominion to wage war. They avoided civilian centers whenever possible. Elira studied the campaign reports. It was surgical, efficient, devastating. The car government collapsed within a week. Its leaders were captured alive. When news spread, the galaxy froze. Empires halted fleet movements. Trade councils called emergency meetings. Old rivals went silent. Elira stood alone in her quarters, staring at the stars. She replayed the images in her mind. Human fleets appearing from nowhere. Soldiers moving without fear. Mercy mixed with absolute control. Elias entered quietly. "You should rest." "I cannot," she said. "Everything I believed about power is wrong." He did not argue. "You didn't punish them," Elira continued. "You removed their ability to harm." "Yes. You didn't win territory." "No. Then what did you gain?" Elias met her gaze. "Stability." Elira shook her head slowly. "The Valkyrian Empire spent centuries building fear. You dismantled an empire in days without terror." "That's because fear burns fast," Elias said. "Preparation lasts." The next galactic broadcast showed car leaders standing before an interstellar tribunal. Human representatives did not shout accusations. They presented evidence, records, proof. The sentence was clear. The car dominion would be dissolved. Its worlds placed under independent governance with human oversight until stable. Elira felt something close to awe. "You didn't destroy them," she said. "You erased the idea of their empire." "Yes." "Is that why no one dares fight you?" she asked quietly. Elias was silent. That night, Elira accessed ancient Valkyrian archives again. She searched records of human encounters from centuries past. She found fragments, warnings, notes written by long-dead Valkyrian strategists. "Do not corner humans. They adapt faster than we calculate. They remember losses forever." Elira closed the files, hands trembling slightly. She had believed the marriage was a leash placed on humanity. Now she understood. It was a signal, a message to the galaxy. Humans did not need to threaten. They simply showed what happened when patience ended. Elira stood beside Elias on the observation deck as human fleets returned home. "Do you regret the marriage?" she asked softly. "No," Elias said. "Do you?" She looked at the stars, at the quiet strength behind them. "No," she replied. "I regret only that we misunderstood you for so long." Elias gave a small smile. The galaxy had just witnessed a truth it could never forget. Humanity did not seek war. But when war came, the galaxy did not celebrate the fall of the car dominion. It went quiet. News traveled faster than fear. Every major network replayed the same images. Human fleets appearing without warning, car warships drifting powerless, leaders captured alive, an empire undone without its worlds being burned. For many, it was worse than destruction. It meant the old rules no longer worked. Princess Elira felt the change immediately. Messages arrived from Valkyrian space in sharp bursts. The High Council demanded her return. Noble houses questioned her loyalty. Military leaders spoke of lost honor. They did not accuse her openly. They did not need to. "You have become too close to them," the Chancellor's message said. "The galaxy believes we kneel to humans." Elira read the words slowly. Then she closed the message. She stood in the observation hall beside Elias as human ships docked calmly, repaired, resupplied, and dispersed. No victory banners, no parades, just routine. "They fear what they do not control," Elias said, watching her reflection in the glass. My people believe power must be visible, Elira replied. If it is not seen, they assume it is not real. That belief has ended many civilizations, Elias said gently. Elira turned to him. The council wants me back. I expected that, Elias replied. Do you want to go? She hesitated. I was raised to serve the Empire, she said, but I now see its weakness. Elias did not push her. Whatever you choose, you won't go alone. When they arrived in Valkyrian space days later, the contrast was sharp. War fleets floated openly, weapons charged. Banners of conquest lined orbital platforms. Elira felt eyes on her as she walked the halls of the capital again. She was no longer just a princess. She was the one who married a human. The High Council chamber filled quickly. Voices rose before the meeting officially began. She compromised our strength. She handed our image to outsiders. She allowed humanity to humiliate the car without Valkyrian command. Elira stood still as accusations flowed around her. Then the High Chancellor struck the floor with his staff. Enough, he said. Princess Elira, you will explain, she stepped forward. I did not hand our strength to humanity, she said calmly. I witnessed it. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. You ended a war without victory, a general snapped. No, Elira replied. We avoided defeat. Silence followed. The car fell, she continued. Not because humans were cruel, but because they were prepared. They dismantled the structure that caused the war. We never learned how to do that. You speak like one of them, a noble accused. I speak like someone who has seen the future, Elira answered. She projected data into the chamber, trade routes shifting, neutral systems aligning with human space, former enemies seeking mediation instead of alliances. Empires are choosing stability over fear, she said. And they are choosing humans to guarantee it. The Chancellor narrowed his eyes. And where does that leave us? Elira met his gaze. At a crossroads. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. That night, Elira walked the palace gardens alone. Memories of her childhood echoed in every path. She had been taught that Valkyrian blood carried destiny. Now she wondered if destiny was a choice. Elias joined her quietly. They're afraid, she said without turning. Yes, of losing relevance. Of losing control, Elias corrected gently. She looked at him then. Will humans ever rule the galaxy? Elias thought carefully. No. Why not? Because ruling creates resistance, he said. Guiding creates trust. Elira exhaled slowly. The next days brought more tension. Valkyrian fleets increased patrols near human space, not to attack but to show strength. Human fleets did not respond. That silence spoke louder than threats. Elira attended a final council session. I propose a permanent alliance, she said. Not dominance, not submission. Partnership, the room erupted. You would chain us to humans. No, Elira said firmly. I would anchor us to the future. The Chancellor stood slowly. His voice was tired. We were conquerors once, he said, but conquest no longer frightens the galaxy. He looked at Elira. Perhaps wisdom must replace fear. The vote was close, but it passed. Valkyria would enter a binding alliance with humanity. When the announcement spread, the galaxy reacted not with shock but relief. Trade surged. Border conflicts paused. Smaller civilizations reached out for protection and mediation. Humanity did not expand. It listened. Elira returned to human space changed. No longer just a bride, no longer just a symbol. She was becoming a bridge. One evening she stood beside Elias again, watching distant stars. My people once believed empires lasted forever, she said. They last as long as they adapt, Elias replied. And if they do, they become lessons. Elira nodded slowly. She had married a human to stop a war. She had stayed to understand why no empire dared fight them. And now she realized something deeper. Humanity was not feared because it destroyed empires. It was feared because it showed them a future where violence no longer worked. And for those who lived by war alone, that future was terrifying. Years passed, and the galaxy slowly began to change. Princess Elira had returned to Valkyrian space, but she no longer felt the weight of duty as she once did. She felt responsibility in a new way. She was no longer just a princess of Valkyrian blood. She had seen humanity in action, had walked among their people, had learned their quiet strength. That experience shaped her thinking more than any training or lecture ever could. The Valkyrian Empire was stable now, not because it crushed others, but because it had learned the value of balance. Trade networks thrived, and former rivals respected the alliance she had helped create. Yet old habits lingered. Noble houses whispered, soldiers complained, and some generals questioned whether she had made the empire soft. Elira did not answer them openly. Instead, she acted. She traveled from system to system, observing, listening, and sharing lessons she had learned with humans. She spoke of preparation, unity, and restraint. She taught that true strength was not in showing dominance, but in being ready for anything. Valkyrian officers were skeptical at first. Some sneered at her stories of humans treating enemy civilians with care or disabling warships instead of destroying them. "That is weakness," a senior commander had said. "No," Elira replied firmly. "That is wisdom." She described the attack on the border world and how human fleets arrived, silent and precise, dismantling the enemy's ability to fight without unnecessary destruction. She spoke of the tribunal that followed and how humans allowed their enemies to live, ensuring the system could function again. "Their strength lies in restraint," she told the assembly, "and that restraint is absolute." Over time, the lessons sank in. Valkyrians began to implement similar strategies. Patrols became more disciplined, focused on defense rather than intimidation. Strategic reserves were hidden across multiple systems, prepared for emergencies, not parades. Young Valkyrians were trained to value precision and preparation over brute force. Meanwhile, her marriage to Commander Elias Ward had matured into something neither political nor superficial. It was partnership. They shared counsel, strategies, and even moments of quiet personal reflection. Elira had once feared that marrying a human meant losing autonomy, but she had gained perspective. Elias treated her not as a symbol, but as an equal, listening to her ideas and respecting her voice. One evening, aboard a Valkyrian orbital station, Elira stood on the observation deck beside Elias. She gazed at the distant stars, wondering if the galaxy had truly changed or if the peace was just temporary. "They still whisper," she said. "They doubt us, doubt you, doubt me." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whispers are old habits, actions last longer, and look at the results." She turned to see fleets passing quietly through hyperspace lanes. Trade vessels moved in coordinated patterns, civilians traveling safely between colonies, and the occasional human scout ship keeping watch without fanfare. The galaxy was calm but not passive. Everything was deliberate, prepared, and resilient. "They do not need to strike first," she said softly, "and that is what terrifies others." Elias smiled. "They've learned the same lesson you have." Months later, a summit was held on a neutral planet. Leaders from dozens of empires attended, many reluctantly. They had witnessed the Car Dominion's collapse, seen the human response firsthand, and understood that any attempt to challenge humanity, or its allies, would be disastrous. Elira entered the council chamber with Elias at her side. She carried herself with quiet confidence, no longer just a princess but a leader in her own right. The room fell silent. Some envoys shifted uncomfortably, realizing the human influence that now guided Valkyria. "Let us speak frankly," Elira began. "The galaxy is changing. Empires built on fear alone will not survive. Those that work together, that prepare carefully, that protect their people, will thrive. Humanity is not here to conquer. Humanity is here to show what happens when force is measured by responsibility, not pride." Murmurs spread, but no one interrupted. She continued, detailing the precision of human military operations, their discipline, and their philosophy of restraint. She explained how the Car Dominion had been neutralized without mass destruction, leaving systems intact and civilians safe. And this, she said, gesturing to Elias, is not an exception. It is how they act every time in every situation. They do not fight for glory. They fight for survival and order, and because of that, no empire dares to provoke them lightly. The room remained quiet, the weight of her words settling. For the first time, Elira realized the true scale of her influence. Her marriage, once a political tool, had become a bridge between civilizations. Through her voice, the galaxy could understand the quiet, patient strength of humans. Over the following years, Elira worked tirelessly to solidify the alliance. Trade agreements were signed, emergency response protocols were shared, and joint training exercises were established. Human and Valkyrian fleets coordinated without arrogance, learning from each other's strategies. She also spent time among civilians. Humans and Valkyrians alike, children and elders, watched her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. She told them stories of past wars and victories, of losses and recoveries, and always emphasized the lesson she had learned from humanity. True power is silent, deliberate, and protective. One day, while overseeing the construction of a new interstellar medical station, Elira stood beside Elias. She watched Valkyrian engineers coordinate with human doctors, civilians helping each other without fear. It was organized chaos, but nothing was wasted or dangerous. They thrive without domination, she said quietly. They do, Elias replied, and they teach by example. Elira thought back to the day she first married Elias, expecting a weak enemy, a political pawn, perhaps even danger. She had learned that humans did not act like the Valkyrians she had known. They did not need to show power to command respect. They did not need fear to enforce obedience. Their greatest strength was patience, preparation, and the ability to act decisively when necessary. She felt pride, not just in her marriage but in what it had created. Not just peace between Valkyria and humanity, but a model for the galaxy. That strength could be measured in restraint, that preparation could outweigh intimidation, and that alliances based on respect could accomplish what centuries of war never had. Years passed, and the galaxy changed in ways few could predict. Former enemies sought alliances rather than battles. Civilizations rebuilt faster, knowing they would be supported rather than exploited. War became rare, not impossible but measured. Humanity did not seek to dominate. They guided, they protected, and because of that, no empire dared test them. Elira often stood with Elias on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. She remembered the fears she had carried when she first left Valkyrian space, the tension she felt during the quiet human wedding, and the disbelief at the disciplined, calm strength of humanity. "I underestimated them," she said quietly one evening. "They underestimated themselves," Elias replied. She smiled. "And I underestimated myself." For a long moment they watched the stars together, and Elira realized that her marriage, once a strategy to stop a war, had become something far greater. It was the symbol of a future where power did not rely on fear, where alliances were forged through respect, and where humanity's quiet, unstoppable strength shaped the galaxy's destiny. No empire fought humanity. Few even dared challenge them. And the ones that did learned too late that patience, preparation, and restraint were weapons sharper than any blade or plasma cannon. Elira's hand found Elias's, and she squeezed it gently. They had not conquered the galaxy, nor had they needed to. They had simply chosen the path of wisdom, guiding the galaxy toward a future she had once thought impossible. The stars stretched endlessly before them. They were quiet, patient, and eternal. And in their light the galaxy learned to respect not the loud, the proud, or the cruel, but the steadfast, the prepared, and the human. And in that lesson, Elira knew the galaxy had truly changed forever. They ended it.